So all this time, comic book Vision has just been a Mexican wrestler. Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I consume, things like Doctor Who, Star Trek and the MCU, which is why I'm doing weekly reviews of WandaVision here on the channel. So if that's your kind of thing, if you like the MCU, do hit that subscribe button, like this video, all that jazz. We're up to episode 6 of WandaVision now, and this episode is called All New Halloween Spooktacular. It's the Halloween episode, one that we knew was coming from the very early trailers, in fact, and we knew that they would be dressing up in their comic book accurate costumes. And I like it. I like the fact that we get that nice little reference there. Wanda even sort of references the headdress being a traditional Sokovian, was it fortune teller's headdress? I like that little touch. And this comic book accurate costumes even stretches to Pietro, who was the big cliffhanger last week. We didn't get anything on that level this week, but we did in terms of revelations. But we did get a few significant things happen in this episode. I should warn you, there's going to be spoilers in this review, so if you don't want any before watching it, go and watch it and then come back. The sitcom element of this have they skipped the 90s? Because this seemed very Malcolm in the Middle, which started in the 2000s. And last week, we had a very 80s feeling sitcom with the kind of family ties and Full House kind of feel to it, which I think both started in the 80s. Although I think they might have both gone into the 90s, so maybe they were rolling 80s and 90s into one as one kind of era, maybe. But we appear to be in the 2000s now, with a kind of very Malcolm in the Middle, sort of talking to camera at various points, breaking the fourth wall. The kids do, as Malcolm does in that show. The very Malcolm in the Middle opening sequence as well. Malcolm in the Middle was something that I watched sporadically. I have caught episodes of it here and there. I never watched it religiously. I never watched every episode of it. But it was a very enjoyable show. Of course, had the great Bryan Cranston in it, who I wouldn't know till many years later was a fantastic dramatic actor as well as a fantastic comedy actor. They should have got a cameo for him in this. Would have been great. Bryan Cranston needs to be in the MCU somewhere. But the sitcom element that's in this episode, other than the sort of very opening sort of section of it doesn't play a major part. We get the opening bit with the kids, talking about Halloween and the introduction to Halloween. But beyond that, the sitcom element takes a back seat very early on, and that's been a trend throughout the series as it's been getting less and less about the sitcom. In the first episode, it was all about the sitcom trope. There was barely anything of the wider story. And it's been getting less and less of the sitcom. And I must admit, I didn't mind it getting less, but it kind of felt this episode that I missed it a little bit. For the first time, I thought it was, maybe they should have put a bit more in. I don't know. We're probably going to get one more episode of sitcom stuff, which I'm guessing is the sort of 2010s from the previews. Looks like kind of like the mockumentary style of sitcom that we've had in things like Parks and Recreation, The Office, and Modern Family. That kind of vibe to it, with lots of pieces to camera like it's a documentary. That seems to be the vibe next week. And then, of course, we have the finale, which I suspect will break out and probably not have any sitcom elements at all. And that will be the big conclusion. But even very early on, when they're talking about the Halloween stuff, Vision is being... He's now got his suspicions, and he's not going to let it go. And he's acting slightly strangely, when he asks about the costume that he's wearing. He says that it's the only thing in the wardrobe, and that is very cold, deadpan, no laugh track or anything. It feels very out of the sitcom structure. It was just a cold thing that Wanda didn't really know how to react to, and he goes against her plans, her script for what should happen in this episode. He decides he's going on, he tells her he's due to go on patrol, but actually she finds out later that was a lie, and he's gone off to investigate the weird goings on in the town a bit more. So they very much go straight in with a wider world and exploring how Vision is finding out what's going on. Outside of the bubble, Hayward, the head of Sword, I like saying Sword is he's increasingly seeming more and more dodgy. Initially, I thought, okay, yeah, they're presenting him as a kind of like tough, no nails type of guy. You know, he's a very, you know, has his way of doing things. It might clash with the people we associate with more, but it's not necessarily that he's a bad guy. Then we got the bit where he tried to kill Wanda last week, and even then, I think it was the wrong course. It made me a bit more cautious of him, but it's understandable, I think, in the context. But here we start to see a lot more of his sort of prejudice come out. He starts making comments about, you know, negative comments about superheroes in general, powered individuals in general. And you kind of get the feeling that there's an underlying sort of kind of resentment there. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. Some of his actions later on in the episode as well. You know, they're very questionable. They're starting to get more and more questionable. Whereas at the very beginning of the show, he seemed like a relatively reasonable guy. It's definitely gone, well, I say the beginning of the show, since episode 4. It's definitely gone downhill since then. So let's deal with the cliffhanger we got at the end of the last episode. That was Pietro. He arrived out of the blue, played by the guy that played the character of Quicksilver in the X-Men movies, which is a completely different fictional universe. So what was going on there? Did we get any answers? Not really. No. But I didn't really expect to straight away. We got some hints. He remembers getting shot, which happened to the MCU Pietro. He doesn't remember anything else. He says he got shot on the street. So whether or not he remembers the whole of MCU Quicksilver's life, I don't know. I'm still kind of hoping he's been pulled from the Fox universe, because I think that would be more interesting and really introduce that kind of multiverse concept, which we're told is kind of being introduced here. So I'm hoping that's kind of where they're going, but it's kind of merged with Wanda's Pietro's memories somehow. I don't know, but I'm kind of hoping that's where it goes. But it was a fun. He was in the stereotypical sitcom-y world. He was the fun, irresponsible uncle that comes to stay. He played that trope very well, and it fit his characteristics from the X-Men movies very well as well. He was probably the highlight of the episode for me. I thought his interactions with the kids were great. His witty sort of banter was great, but then there were some nice touching moments as well, and it kind of felt like he genuinely felt for his sister, and there were some moments where it felt like they were connecting on a sort of emotional level as well, which was quite nice. At one point he asked her, "Where were you hiding all these kids?" which links back to a line last week, because I did wonder when I saw the previews for this episode. Vision had said last week, you know, why are our kids the only kids in town? The playgrounds are empty, blah, 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 blah. Clearly, Wanda has taken that on board and populated the town with kids somehow. I suspect the kids are sort of made up rather than real people that are being controlled, as opposed to most of the adults, which are people that she's effectively kidnapped. I wonder if that has an effect on her control over the people, though, because as we get further away from where Wanda is, as Vision explores, he sort of moves further away from Wanda and goes and explores the town. He starts to notice that people are acting strangely. Like, initially there's a woman that is hanging some decorations, but she's just doing the same action and not doing anything again and again, and there's a tear going down her eye. Someone who's trapped in this repetitive cycle. Probably because Wanda can only exert so much control when she's not near someone, so she kind of sets people up in a kind of tableau of what she thinks they should be doing, but can't focus enough to control them in anything particularly complex. And maybe that's because she's created all these kids as well. Maybe before she had that ability, but she's strained by creating these kids as well. Another interesting thing that comes out from a chat with Pietro is that she doesn't know how this started. She just remembers feeling very lonely. So I think this plays into the fact that she might have made a deal with Mephisto. That's the sort of main running theory that people have at the moment. And consequently, that deal, part of that was that her memory of making that deal was quite clouded, or became clouded. Vision getting more and more suspicious has been a good character arc for him, and it sort of culminates here in him, initially finding Agnes right at the edge of town in her car, and he sort of does that thing to her head that he did to his colleague a few weeks ago, and snaps her sort of out of it, and she says, "Oh, you're Vision from the Avengers," and he doesn't know who the Avengers are. He doesn't remember that. And also that he's dead. She says, "You're dead. Am I dead? You're dead." Now, interestingly, I think a lot of people have been theorizing that she might be not one of the normal town people. She might have some other kind of role in this that might be behind it as well. But she does seem here to be under some kind of Wanda's influence. So whether or not she was just putting it on, or what's going on there, or if she was part of introducing Wanda to make the deal, but then she kind of got trapped by it herself, maybe? I don't know. What do you think? And after his encounter, Vision leaves the bubble, tries to leave the bubble anyway, but as he does, bits of him, he's really struggling to get through the barrier, bits of him are flying off back into the barrier. Looks like he's going to die. At this point, the sword agents are surrounding him as well. Nobody's helping him, they're just sort of watching it. And it's Wanda's kids that realize something's wrong. One of them that has sort of powers similar to Wanda knows something's up and tells her mum, and Wanda expands the barrier. So that's quite a significant bit. Meanwhile, while all this has been going on, of course, we have the Darcy, Jimmy, and people there outside of that. And I already brushed briefly on how Hayward is being a bit of a dick. I like what's going on here. There's more hints towards Monica's potential future powers. Having gone through the barrier a couple of times now, they talk about how her cell structure has been completely rewritten, and I think they're warning about going back in again, which I think is the plan. And they kind of go rogue because Hayward takes them off of the project basically, but they kind of go rogue, hack into his computer and stuff. I like that nice little sort of subterfuge element there. It was kind of exciting bit of the episode. It ends with them sort of going to meet Monica's mysterious contact, her astrophysicist. Still wondering who that's going to be. Is it going to be Reed Richards? Is it going to be Rhodey, who is an astrophysicist apparently? War Machine. Is it going to be somebody else? It's probably going to be somebody that we will, when we see them, we'll go, oh, it's them. But who? Theories below, please. So Jimmy and Monica are driving to meet him. Darcy stays behind to try and get more information off the computer, but that's when Vision starts coming out, so she goes out to watch it as well. And when Wanda expands the field of the town, the magical field, the bubble over the town, it sweeps through all of the sword camp. All the people, it encompasses and basically brings them all into this sitcom world currently in the early 2000s or late 90s or something like that. So everything gets transformed. The SUVs get transformed into like burger vets. Everything gets transformed into a circus. So a lot of the military personnel get turned into clowns. The big base tent gets turned into a circus tent, a big top. The vans get turned into burger vans and things like that, and horse carriages. And Darcy gets swept up in this too. In fact, most of the personnel on the sword base do. Only Hayward and whoever's in the car that he's in escape, and also Monica and Jimmy had already been heading out of town, so they were already ahead of it. So they are not caught in it as well. But Darcy had been sort of restrained to a car by this point by the other sword agents, and she got swooped in. We haven't seen what she transforms into though. Did she transform into a clown? Is she the ringmaster? Who knows? I'm looking forward to seeing what she looks like as a 90s person. I suppose it'll be 90s, 2000s. Maybe we'll be in 2010s by next week. Who knows? But she'll be changed. That'll be interesting to see. It's a really interesting development at the end. There wasn't quite as much here, and I really hope we continue to get Pietro next week as well. They didn't sort of wrap up his storyline at all. It was just kind of ticking over, giving us an introduction to him as a character, dropping hints about the fact that Wanda knows that he's not quite right and that he looks different. Oh, he had a comic book accurate costume as well for Halloween. He had a kind of the lightning bolt across his chest in the blue, and even spiked up his hair in the kind of very traditional Quicksilver way from the comics as well. So that was quite nice to see. So yeah, I think things are really picking up now in terms of heading towards a conclusion and a confrontation. Now most of the Sword agents are inside. What are they going to do next? Are they going to be calling back reinforcements? Where are the rest of the Avengers? Because you'd think they would have realised something was up by now. At least some of them. Maybe that's who we're going to see. Maybe we're going to see one or two of them next week. Who knows? I really enjoyed this episode. I've really enjoyed every episode, but this is good. The only thing I would say is that I am missing slightly the quirkiness of the sitcom element as it gets less and less. But I understand why they're doing it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I will be here again for another review next week, so I will see you then. Bye-bye.